Church family, like many people around this holiday season, I think more and more about my loved ones who have gone home to be with the Lord. In particular, I think about my maternal grandmother, with whom I spent a lot of time in the kitchen, especially around the holidays, just me and her, helping her prepare Thanksgiving spread for our family. One thing that I took for granted then, but have since grown in my appreciation of, was that no matter how knotted and wrinkled and sore her hands were, so even in the years leading up to her demise, she could not wear her wedding ring because of how old Arthur had taken its toll on her knuckles. Many things that I have grown in my appreciation of was how she still found a way to chop vegetables, to clean chickens, to stir cake batters, to wash pots and pans and dishes, to do all the things required of a home chef. Of course, cooking was not the only thing that she did with her hands. She cared for us with her hands. She wrapped herself around us and hugged us with her hands. She wiped tears from our eyes with her hands. She held on to us as we crossed the street with her hands. Don't get it twisted, church family. Not only did she care for us with her hands, you already know where I'm going. She corrected us with her hands too. I still will never forget how one time somehow Dubby turned that wet dish rag into a leather belt to tear my behind. When I think about my grandmother, I honestly think the most about her hands. It was only soon after her spirit caught flight on the wings of the morning to fly to her heavenly home that her hands more clearly told me her story. I'm realizing more and more that behind each knot was a trial she overcame. Underneath each wrinkle was a challenge she endured. Within each joint was the strength of a woman, who, with the odds stacked against her, yet and still had a dogged determination to build a better life for herself, for her children, and for her children's children. Grandmother's hands not only told me the story, it tells those who would encounter her, her story, who she was, what she did, and even what she hoped for. And while my grandmother's hands were unique, as no two pair of hands are alike, her hands are not unique in that it's all of our hands that tell all of our stories of how God's hands gets into our hands to do what His hands created, called, and commissioned us to do. Do me a favor, if you will, church family. Put your hands out in front of you. Take a good look at them. What is the story that your hands tell? What is it that your hands do on a day-to-day basis? How is it that your hands point to what you're hoping for in this life? Put your hands down, and we can see that a set of hands is at the center of our text today. There in verse 9, it is the story, it is the work, it is the hope of Nehemiah's hands that his named enemies, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, are seeking to stop. They are plotting, they are scheming, they are trying to induce fear and charge him with false accusations, hoping that these will cause his hands to drop from doing their God-given work. I think there are some people in the sanctuary today who share in this story like Nehemiah. Have you ever been there before? Have you ever been the focus of an attack? Have you ever had to deal with some harsh criticism? Have you ever been minding your own business, yet seemingly walking around with a target on your back? Have you ever been the victim of an unwarranted attack, an attack on your work, an attack on your character, an attack on your peace of mind? Church, have you ever been lied on and cheated on and talked about and misunderstood? You ever found yourself in a situation like Nehemiah where if God didn't step in, these old hands of yours would have trembled, or worse yet, your hands would have picked something up to do something else? Here at the center of the narrative remain Nehemiah's hands, and here it is that Nehemiah must make a decision about what he's going to do with them. Will he drop them, or will he strengthen them? See, like my grandmother, like Nehemiah, our lives, our destinies, our hopes, our life's call and work have been placed by God in our hands. While his hands are still on us, it's up to us to choose what we do with our hands. In church, it is critical that we make the correct decision, because we all know that our hands can heal, but our hands can also hurt. Our hands can be used for building. Our hands can also destroy. Our hands can work, but our hands can also idle. So it is, what Nehemiah teaches us throughout this book is that not only must we wrestle with handling the hand of God faithfully on our lives, here it is, and here we see that we must handle our own hands faithfully too. So the question here then becomes, in a world where hands are more easily and more often used for evil than they are for good, in circumstances where throwing hands may be what we want to do the most, moments where our hands are tired and weak and worn and hurting and sore, the question that we must answer becomes, how then do I handle my hands faithfully? Well, beloved, if the text be true, if the text have cues and clues, and I believe that it does, to handle your hands faithfully, you must first be determined about your development. Beloved, remember, this is not the first time that Nehemiah encounters Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. They have been plotting and scheming and criticizing and detracting and distracting almost all of these 6 prior chapters. They have been saying all manner of evil. They have been spreading lies. They have been making unfounded threats, and they have been trying their best to discourage Nehemiah. One thing you can be sure for about Nehemiah is that Nehemiah is determined to do what he set out to do. And up until this 6th chapter, he doesn't pay them any mind. He keeps working away at the wall. He keeps building. He keeps repairing. He keeps managing. He keeps making sure everybody is protected and provided for. He makes sure that everybody has everything that they need. And we see here now between the 4th and the 6th chapter that the other half of the wall's height had been restored. The Bible records in chapter 6, verse 1, that Nehemiah had built the wall, and there was no gap left in it. And now, because Nehemiah had actually done what he said he was going to do, now that Nehemiah had finished what so many others had set out to do but could not accomplish for one reason or another, now after he's done that, Nehemiah's named enemies, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, become so desperate that they concoct this crazy explanation for it in their minds. And this explanation was this, that Nehemiah was rebuilding the wall to rebel against his boss, the king of Persia, and to set himself up as the king of Judah. You see, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, they actually got together and came up with this and sent a message to Nehemiah asking him to meet so that they can have a conference about this. They send this message, read it there in your Bibles, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. Each time Nehemiah says, I'm doing a great work and I can't be bothered with this. Why should I stop working and come down and meet with you? You see, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem are like that one annoying person who keeps texting you and they just can't seem to get the picture that you're not interested. Church family, don't overlook the place where Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem wanted Nehemiah to meet them. It was a village in the plain of Ono. And that should have been enough warning right there in the name, Ono. It was a village about 20 miles northwest of Jerusalem, just enough space for him to get away from the work so that they could ambush him. And here's a freebie for you. Anytime somebody wants to meet you to talk to you about what you're doing, and they got to take you away from what you're doing to talk about it, chances are they don't want nothing good. As a matter of fact, it's probably not good intention either. And so since Nehemiah left them on red for a fifth time, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem sent him a message. This time, they sent it in the form of a Facebook post. Sent it in the form of an open letter, meaning they wanted everybody to read it. Instead of doing what they were supposed to be doing, which was governing their own territories that they had been placed over by the king too, they had gotten together and concocted in their own minds this elaborate conspiracy theory that Nehemiah is rebuilding the wall to rebel against his boss, the king of Persia, to set himself up as the king of Judah. And here it is that Nehemiah teaches us the lesson of our first point. We have to be determined about our development. Remember, Nehemiah was sent by the king in chapter 2 to rebuild the wall. And though the wall itself was rebuilt, your Bible says in chapter 6, verse 1, that the doors had not yet been set up in the gates, which means that Nehemiah's work was not yet done. And it didn't matter what Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem did or said. At the end of the day, it wouldn't matter that they were talking junk and making all these threats and accusations. What would matter is whether or not Nehemiah got his work done and did what he told the king that he was going to do. When Monty Roberts was a kid, he saw his father work as a horse trainer, moving from stable to stable, from ranch to ranch, training horses and taking his family with him on this itinerant lifestyle. And after seeing this, Monty, when he was a senior in high school, his teacher asked him to write about what he wanted to be when he grew up. Monty didn't hesitate for a minute. Monty wrote a 7-page paper about how he wanted to be the owner of a horse ranch. Monty even drew a location. He designed the buildings, the stables, and even the house he would live in, and an appendix attached to the back. Having completed his assignment, he turned the paper in. 2 days later, he received his paper with the letter F at the top. After class, he went up to the teacher and asked, "Why did I get an F?" His teacher responded, "Your dreams are so unrealistic for a boy like you who has no money, who has no resources, and who comes from a migrant family." The teacher said, "It is impossible for you to reach these far-fetched goals of yours. You are a senior in high school now. You need to be more realistic. But you can rewrite this paper for a better grade." Monty went home and asked his father what he should do. The father answered, "Son, this is very important for you, but I can't tell you what to do. You have to make up your own mind about this." After a few days, Monty brought the same paper back to his teacher after making no changes. Monty told that teacher, "Keep the F, and I'll keep my dream." The story goes that Monty grew up. He owned a 200-acre horse ranch and now lives in a 4,000 square foot house in the middle of that property that he drew and designed, and that school paper is framed over his fireplace. And beloved, like Monty and like Nehemiah, you must be determined about your development. You can't let other people drag you down to their level of dysfunction. The only thing you have to worry about is if you are doing what God called you to do with your whole heart. You can't spend your fleeting time. You can't waste your limited energy being discouraged by some folk who don't have any business of their own to mind. You got to handle your own hands. Let them say what they're going to say. Let them do what they're going to do. Let them come up with their half-baked conspiracy theories. Let them scheme and connive and twist the truth. But you be determined about your development. The more they talk, the more you got to build. The more they plan against you, the more you got to work for yourself. The more they try, the more you ought to do. You got to handle your hands, not throw them. Like President Obama said, don't boo, vote. I'm going to take it and change it. Don't boo, do. You are going to handle your hands faithfully. Not only do you have to be determined about your development, but secondly, you have to be discerning about their distractions. If this half-baked scheme to lure Nehemiah away from the work to meet them on the plain of Ono didn't work, if their half-done plot to accuse Nehemiah of treason with their open letter didn't work, they would try it one more way. You see, instead of trying Nehemiah directly, they would resort to trying him indirectly. They couldn't get to him from the outside. They would try to get to him from the inside. You see, their stated goal was to stop the work of his hands. And if they couldn't do it by direct discouragement, they would try to do it by indirect distraction. And so it is that they hired what the Bible records as the person being named Shemaiah to give what was supposed to be a word of prophecy to Nehemiah about his safety. Be clear here, Shemaiah was someone who was in religious leadership. As a matter of fact, when you read chapter 6 in its entirety, you will see that Shemaiah was oh so holy. When he sent his message to Nehemiah, the Bible records in verse 10 that he, quote, was confined to his house, indicating that he was on some type of consecration. One day, Nehemiah stopped by Shemaiah's house, and Shemaiah said to Nehemiah in verse 10, "Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, tonight they are coming to kill you." And here, Nehemiah shows us why it's so important that you have your own prayer life. Because here it is that Nehemiah rightly discerns that Shemaiah is a false prophet, which just goes to show that Paula White ain't nothing new. That just because someone acts so holy, just because someone is on consecration, just because someone is in elected religious leadership, just because someone can speak in tongues and make their voice sound like a voice of authority and give you a word from the Lord, doesn't mean that that person can't be used by the enemy. See, church family, Shemaiah's prophecy sounded right, but it wasn't right. It was right in that they wanted to kill him. But it wasn't right in that they were actually going to kill him directly, as Shemaiah made it out to seem. You see, remember I told you that if they could not stop him directly with discouragement, they would try to stop him indirectly by distraction. And if Nehemiah had gone and done what Shemaiah told him to do, if Nehemiah had sought refuge in the temple, Nehemiah would have been breaking God's law, as lay people were not allowed to enter the temple. Nehemiah, if he listened to Shemaiah, would have been branded as a transgressor of sacred law. And if that would have happened, not only would he have gained a reputation as a coward, he would lose his credibility as their leader. And in this season of your life, and really in every season of your life, you ought to include in your prayers that God would give you discernment. Because the reality is, one wrong move, no matter how right it may seem at the time, can cost you everything. And discernment, my sister and my brother, is not the ability to tell between what's right and what's wrong, because most of us can do that without the Holy Ghost. But discernment is the God-given gift to be able to differentiate between what's right and what's almost right. The Bible says that there is a way that seemeth right unto man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. You have to be discerning about what is told to you, about what opportunities come your way, because how many know that every open door is not an appointed door? Just because it sounds good to you doesn't mean that it will be good for you. That just because it may seem like the right thing to do at the time, it will have eternal consequences yet unforeseen. Church, you have to be discerning. Don't move from what God told you to do first until you hear from him what he tells you to do second. You have to be like Colonel Gothal's on the Panama Canal. His biggest challenge was the criticism he got back home by those who said he would never finish the project. At one point when a colleague asked him if he was going to reply to his critics, Gothel said, "In time," and his colleague said, "When?" and Gothel said, "When I'm finished." Church, don't rush the plan of God. No matter how much of a hurry you're in, no matter how much of a hurry others are in, no matter how much of a hurry your enemies are in, believe this, that God is not in a hurry. He holds time and eternity in his hands. Like Henry Ford said, a weakness of all human beings is trying to do too many things at once. He said that scatters effort and destroys direction. It makes for haste, and haste makes waste. Church, don't you go around the purpose of God. His protection won't be there. Don't start your own plan. Yours will fail and God's will still prevail. Don't you get scared and break God's law trying to save yourself. You will lose yourself and wreck yourself in the process. So it is, if you are going to faithfully handle your hands, you have to be determined about your development. You have to be discerning about their distractions. And thirdly and finally, you have to be demanding about God's deliverance. Here it is, like last week, Nehemiah concludes this episode in his life with a prayer. And his prayer here is similar to the one at the end of chapter 5 that we looked at last week. He prays in chapter 6, verse 14, "Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, according to these things that they did. And also the prophetess Noadiah, the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid." Just like last week, we can't read this prayer as Nehemiah being self-righteous and boasting to God in prayer. We have to put his prayer in its proper perspective. Like we saw last week, like we've seen this whole series, Nehemiah is on assignment. And his assignment is to rebuild the wall, which is really about restoring their witness. Nehemiah is on assignment. He's on assignment to bring God's people back into the blessings of the covenant, back into the life of the covenant, a God-blessed kind of life that would foreshadow the type of an abundant and eternal life that we now have in our restored witness because of our saving faith in the death, the burial, the resurrection, and the soon return of Jesus Christ. It's a life that is described in covenantal terms there in Deuteronomy chapter 28, that blessed shall you be in the city. Blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall you be when you come in. Blessed shall you be when you go out. That if you do all these things in the covenant, that the Lord shall make you the head and not the tail. That the Lord shall only set you up at the top and not the bottom. Watch this. But if you only obey the commandments of the Lord your God. Nehemiah here is showing us, he's showing us just how serious he is about what God had placed in his heart. About what God had put his hands on him to do through his hands. Nehemiah shows us what it truly means to believe beyond a shadow of a doubt. To believe even when your enemies plot against you. To believe even when your hands shake at the fear of the unknown. To believe even when you're catching hell on every side. Nehemiah shows us that we are well within our rights to demand that God's deliverance will come. After all, this is the reason why Nehemiah is doing all of this in the first place. Nehemiah didn't leave the lap of luxury to live in the ruins for nothing. Nehemiah didn't leave his good-paying job as the right-hand man to the king for nothing. Nehemiah didn't go through being lied on and lied to for nothing. Nehemiah did all that he did with his hands so that God would deliver, so that God would bring out, so that God would restore God's people with God's mighty hands. So it is that even when it got dangerous, even when his life was threatened, even when his enemies were working overtime, trying to discourage, trying to distract, trying to destroy him, so it is that Nehemiah handled his hands. He didn't wring them in fear. He didn't throw them at his enemies. He didn't stop them from what they were doing. But with every brick that he laid, with every direction that he gave to the builders, with every door that he set up, he demanded, despite the discouragement and the distractions, that he and his people would soon experience God's deliverance. Story is told that as Abraham Lincoln prepared to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, he took his pen and moved it to the signature line. He paused for a moment, and then he dropped the pen. When asked why, President Lincoln replied, "If my name goes into history, it will be for this act. And if my hand trembles when I sign it, there will be some who will say he hesitated." So President Lincoln then turned back to the table, took up the pen, found the signature line, and boldly and firmly signed his name. That's all I've come to tell somebody today. But there will be times when you will be doing the work that God has given your hands to do. And there will be times along the way when your hands will get weary. There will be times along the way when your hands will begin to falter. There will be times along the way when your hands will be tired. A child of God like Nehemiah, you've got to faithfully handle your hands. You've got to faithfully handle your hands and be determined about your development. You've got to faithfully handle your hands and be discerning about their distractions. You've got to faithfully handle your hands and be demanding about God's deliverance. You've got to do what your Savior Jesus said. You can't turn around and look back, but you got to keep your hand on the plow, and you got to hold on. You got to hold on through your tears. You have to hold on through your fears. You have to hold on through your test. You have to hold on through your trial. You have to hold on through your trouble. Because the reason you can hold on is because one dark Friday, they nailed his hands to an old rugged cross. They put a nail in his left hand. They put a nail in his right hand. And even though he was mocked, even though he was spit on, even though he was rejected, Jesus handled his hands because he knew that he could put himself in the Father's hands. That's why Jesus chose to die. No man could take his life from him. But that's why Jesus said on the cross, there at the end, that into thy hands I commit my spirit. And the Bible says, snatched the keys to death, hell, and the grave. And he kept on handling his hand. And he brought out the saints with him. And 3 days later, bright early Sunday morning, they tell me that he got up with all power where in his hands, power to strengthen your hands, power to save your hands, power to deliver your hands, power to use your hands. So you want to use your hands right now and clap your hands, all ye people, because every time you clap your hands, you declare that no matter how bad my enemies are, no matter how bad they plot and scheme, every time you clap your hands, you still say that God is still good. Oh, you want to clap your hands, because every time you clap your hands, you put the enemy on notice that your praise is your weapon, that when praise goes up, blessings come down, that when praises go up, the enemy will be defeated. Oh, you want to handle your hands, and after you clap your hands, you want to raise your hands, because every time you raise your hands, you declare that you still have the victory, that God is still worthy to be praised. After you clap your hands, you want to lift up your hands, because every time you lift up your hands, you surrender to the plan of God for your life, and you defeat the plan of the enemy. You want to handle your hands, and after you clap your hands, after you lift your hands, you want to shake your neighbor's hand. Go and shake your neighbor's hand, and you want to tell him that this is what a survivor feels like, that this is what an overcomer feels like, that this is what a victor feels like, that this is what a miracle feels like. You want to clap your hands, you want to raise your hands, you want to shake your neighbor's hand and tell your neighbor, since you're shaking my hand, why don't you be healed? Tell your neighbor, since you're shaking my hand, why don't you be delivered? Tell your neighbor, since you're shaking my hand, why don't you be set free? Now let go of that hand. Handle your hands and reach up and put your hand in God's hands, because time